This Sunday we shall commemorate Tisha B'Av, the saddest day of our calendar. It marks the destruction of the first temple by the Babylonians and the second by the Romans. Tisha B'Av is a day of tragedy and mourning, destruction and exile. And the Talmud relates that the destruction of Jerusalem came through the story of Kamtza and Bar Kamtza. A certain man had a friend, Kamtza, and an enemy called Bar Kamtza. He once made a party and said to his servant, "Go, bring me Kamtza." And the man went and erroneously brought Bar Kamtza. When the host found Bar Kamtza there, he said, "What are you doing here? Get out!" Said the other, "Since I'm here, at least let me stay. I will reimburse you for whatever I eat and drink." "No," retorted the host. "Then let me give you half the cost of the party." "No," said the other. "Then let me pay for the entire party." He still said no. He grabbed Bar Kamtza by the hand and threw him out. Said Bar Kamtza, "Since the rabbis were sitting there and didn't intervene in my humiliation, this shows that they agreed with the host. I am going to go and inform against them to the government." And so he went and told the emperor, "The Jews are rebelling against you." On Bar Kamtza's advice, the emperor sought to test the allegation of rebellion, and he sent a calf to the rabbis to sacrifice. As it was being delivered, Bar Kamtza cut a small nick into the animal's lip or eyelid, not something that would have bothered the Romans, but rendering it unfit for kosher sacrifice. And we now hit a tragic final act of rabbinic paralysis. The sages thought that they should sacrifice the blemished animal and not anger the emperor. Rabbi Zechariah ben Avkolas would have none of it. He said that word would get out that it was permissible to drop our standards and offer up blemished animals. And so the rabbis considered killing Bar Kamtza for cutting the emperor's calf. Again, Zechariah ben Avkolas would have none of it. He reported that this would lead people to say that marking a sacrificial animal had become a capital offense. And so the sages did nothing. The animal was not sacrificed, and the Roman assault on Jerusalem began. The Talmud continues. Rabbi Yochanan says, "The excessive humility of Rabbi Zechariah ben Avkolas destroyed our temple, burnt our sanctuary, and exiled us from our land." Anava, modesty or humility, is normally considered a compelling virtue. Moshe was anav mikol adam, the epitome of modesty. In the case of Zechariah ben Avkolas, it became the destructive force. Rashi explains that the excessive humility of Zechariah ben Avkolas was that he was so placid that he was not prepared to act against the vindictive troublemaker. The Chatam Sofer says he was too literal and narrow, unprepared to look beyond the letter of the law. Rabbi Tzvi Hirsch Hayes says he lacked the convictions of his own learning. He didn't consider that he had the right or the authority to speak out. The rabbis could have placed Tisha B'Av in the context of the spiritual conflict between good and evil, Israel and Amalek, the grandiose forces that determine our destiny. Instead, they highlight Kamtza and Bar Kamtza, the simple story of a man so blinded by hatred that he embarrassed another, the simple story of that other so embittered that he brought the internal problems of the Jewish community into the public arena. Who is to blame? Clearly, the ungracious host bears guilt. The stubborn and vindictive Bar Kamtza bears guilt. The rabbis who sat by bear guilt. Zechariah ben Avkolas, who failed to rise to the occasion and show leadership, bears guilt. Curiously, in the Talmud, the story is introduced as the tale of Kamtza and Bar Kamtza, but at its conclusion, Rabbi Yochanan points the finger at the excessive humility of Rabbi Zechariah ben Avkolas. This destroyed our temple, burnt our sanctuary, and exiled us from our land. 19.5 centuries ago, the Romans despoiled the temple in Jerusalem and cast the Jewish people into exile. Our own capacity for self-destructive behavior is nothing new. It's been a motif of Jewish communities and Israeli politics throughout time. In some respects, we're a stronger Jewish world and blessed with greater national security than at any time in Jewish history. However, we're also a Jewish people more riven and divided against itself than any time before. There are greater tensions between religious and secular, religious and religious, between disparate visions of Israel. Sectors of the Jewish community puzzle and marginalize fellow Jews. Jews rally against Israel to disenfranchise, boycott, and disengage. The challenge for our rabbis has always been to find the right solution within halakha. One cannot save Yiddishkeit by jettisoning the Torah. An innate conservatism preserves authenticity against faddism, fashion, or whim. Nonetheless, we learn from the Kamsa Bar Kamsa story that the sages hold the rabbis accountable. Zachariah ben Avkolos had the authority. He was the one they were listening to. He could see the precipice or feel the slippery slope. He was prepared to opine on the consequences of acting, but did not articulate the consequences of inaction. More particularly, he did not call out the injustice as if that was not his department. On Tisha B'Av we are reminded that while idolatry and bloodshed destroyed the first temple and saw a century of exile, schism and misplaced self-righteous conduct destroyed the second temple, and for these 2 millennia later we're still struggling to recover. For 2,000 years we have prayed. May Hashem bless us with peace in a unified Jerusalem. May we be amongst its builders. May we and our leaders recognize that heavenly healing of our city begins with our endeavors to address the rifts, to unify our people, to call out injustice, and with our own urgent initiatives to heal ourselves. Wishing you and all your families Shabbat Shalom, and may redemption come soon.